We're not going to talk a whole lot about objects yet, but we will talk a little bit about them because we can do some cool things with them. Now that we've started using variables, we can actually use some of the concepts of objects. And we're just going to touch on just enough that we need for you to get this sort of the concept. Later on, eventually, we'll talk more about it. I talked about variables previously, and I said that a variable holds stuff. And that's more or less true. It's a good enough definition for you to kind of understand how we use them, but it's not entirely accurate. Really, variables are more so a system of keeping track of stuff. Your computer memory holds whatever. Whenever you write a string in there or a number, your computer's memory is holding it. And that's not really what the variable is doing. The variable is keeping track of it. So if you've got your favorite giraffe stored somewhere on your computer, if you don't store it, it's still on the memory somewhere. It just doesn't know where it is. So you can almost imagine like your computer's memory is like a bunch of boxes, right? So we have a bunch of boxes here, and which one is the giraffe in? That could take a while to figure it out. But really, that wasn't really accurate because this is closer to what your computer's memory is like, except like it's not even like a field of boxes, it's more like an ocean of boxes. There's tons of memory in modern computers, and it's just going to get worse and worse. The variable helps the computer know where it is. It keeps track of it. It points to that part of the memory. And sometimes you'll hear them referred to as pointers. A variable is a pointer to a specific piece of data. The reason that's important is that pointer sort of reserves it. It says, like, this is important, I need to keep track of this. Because what your computer does is the free memory that your computer has is not always free. A lot of times there's data there, but it's not slated to be saved. There's nothing pointing at it saying this is important. So when your computer needs that space, it just recycles that bit of memory, it just overwrites it. Without a variable, your giraffe gets recycled into some other piece of data. Using the variable, your computer can point at it and say, like, hey, I know where it is, I found it. Now, being that we have started declaring variables and we can point at them, that means that we can do stuff with them. Just about everything in Python is an object, and objects have properties and they have behaviors. If you think about just wherever you're sitting, whether it be a classroom or a bedroom or even on a commute like in a car or on a bus somewhere or something, everything around you has properties, right? So if you're sitting in a chair, it has attributes to it, right? It has legs. It probably has some sort of cushion, or it has a seat. It might have a back to it. It has attributes. And some of those are universal of chairs. Some of them are often found, but not always, like having legs. Some of them might be independent to that specific chair, like what color is it? There are also like behaviors that can go along with that. So like if it's a chair, you can probably sit on it, right? But that might not be the best example. Instead, like maybe you have the clock up there on the wall. So being that it's a clock, it has different hands that tell time, or it might have a digit system that instead shows the time, but there is some sort of attribute that shows the time. And it has behaviors, right? It can keep track of time by using a quartz or whatever method that clock happens to use. If we talk about a lamp, this lamp in particular has a shade. The shade is blue, the lamp itself is white, maybe out of porcelain or ceramic or some sort of property like that, right? Those are attributes. A behavior of it would be that you can turn on the lamp, right? And it all of a sudden lights up. Now, it doesn't turn on because this specific lamp turns on. It turns on because it is a lamp, and that's what lamps do. They brighten things up. That is a behavior of lamps in general, not of that specific lamp. Now, if that lamp does something cool, then that might be something specific for that lamp. But lamps in general have certain ideas and certain properties and behaviors that we expect because it is a lamp. When you're in Python, just about everything is an object as well. And whether we're playing with a number, like a byte or an integer or a short or a float, some of those things that we haven't really talked about yet, those are objects. Or if we're talking about a string, that's an object too. And they have properties and they have behaviors that we can use. So using those behaviors, we can change or modify aspects of our string or do things with our strings that can be useful in programs. And so in the next video, we'll do that. We'll check out some of the different string methods, which is a word commonly used in programming for like an object's behavior. that we can use to change what our program does.